As 2022 was coming to a close, I realized something. I had not read a physical book in over a year and a half. Now, for me, that's very unusual. I'm an avid reader. There's something visceral about having a book in your hand and being able to turn the pages. And I decided I was going to get back into the habit of doing that. So, I picked up a book recently, first book of the year, on January 1st. Started reading it. And it was James Wesley Rawles' How to Survive the End of the World as We Know It. In this book, he talks about a whole plethora of stuff in regards to survivalism and being prepared. At the beginning of the book, he talks about his survival philosophy. And I thought I would share it with you because it's pertinent to our lifestyle. Hey everybody, welcome back to Grumpy Acres. As I said, normally I'm an avid reader. Something about this whole move and starting over threw me off my game. I want to get back on it, and now's the time to do it. So I decided I'm going to start reading on a regular basis again. I'm going to put down the electronic stuff. I'm going to turn off the TV, turn off the radio. I'm going to bury myself in a book. And I enjoy reading books, as you can see, that help us in our homesteading and preparedness lifestyle. Well, this book, How to Survive the End of the World as We Know It, is a staple. And chances are, if you're a prepper or you've been in the survival community for a while, you either own this book or you've borrowed it from somebody, a library, and you've read it. It's actually a pretty good book. Now, for those of you that don't know who James Wesley Rawles is, he's an author. He runs the survivalblog.com. It's probably one of the oldest running blogs of that type. I'll put a link down below for it. But I started reading him. He was doing a novel. He was writing a story back in the late 90s. And he was posting it online on BBSs. That's the electronic bulletin board services. And I found this story and I started reading it. I was like, wow, this is it. It was like when I was right first getting into the whole preparedness mindset. And it was called the Gay 90s is what it was. Well, it developed and turned into the title changed and it became Triple Aught. And I've still got ANSI text file someplace of that original story. But that story developed into the 5 novel series of the Patriots. And I've been reading him ever since then. So he's one of my favorite authors. I really enjoy reading his stuff. His practical how-to books. He's got this one, and he's got the Tools for Survival book. But they're good practical books on being prepared, and his novels. I really enjoy his novels. A lot of the stuff he talks about. People complain about them being gear porn. But he does talk in depth about how to use this stuff. So it's a practical how to survive thing wrapped up in fiction work. Highly recommended if you're into that type of story. Anyway, as I said, in this book, at the beginning of the book, he talks about his survival philosophy, and I couldn't help but think how it fit into the whole full spectrum preparedness aspect that we're pushing, and how it's the basis of what a lot of the reason behind why we're homesteading is. And I think if you haven't heard his philosophy, I think after you hear it, you'll agree that it really is a good foundation, a good starting place for your journey through preparedness and into homesteading. And like I've always said, homesteading is the ultimate expression of preparedness. So if you fall anywhere on that spectrum, I think this will really speak to you and really be pertinent to you. So here's a general summary of James Wesley Rawles' survival philosophy. The first one: lightly populated areas are better than high density areas. Simple fact: fewer people you have in an area, the less problems you have. In in an event, end of the world as we know it event, mass exodus. We've talked about that during the security and the location, the shelter aspects of full spectrum preparedness. You're better off living where there are fewer people. There's less problems that can happen. The problems that you have are more easily taken care of, and in the event of some big event happening that would cause a mass exodus from the city, as these people, the golden horde that we talked about, as these people spread out, they'll become more and more diluted by space, and you'll have fewer problems dealing with them. The next aspect of his philosophy is show restraint, but always have recourse for lethal force. Now, there's a saying in the gun community: it's always better to have a gun and not need it than need a gun and not have it. You should always follow the escalation of force rules. You start with non-lethal, verbal, physical, non-lethal, and then lethal. You should always move up. You do not immediately go to lethal force. You should always be able to move up that spectrum and have lethal force be the last resort. All right, it takes training. You need to learn how to identify confrontations, and you need to learn how to deal with them in that manner, going through the spectrum of force. The third aspect is there's strength in numbers. Sure, the lone wolf idea appeals to people because it's them going on their own. Fact of the matter is, you need people. You need people around you. You cannot be awake 24/7. You cannot defend your homestead. You cannot take care of everything that needs to be done by yourself. You need people. This is why community is so important to us. And we start with our family, then we start with our circle, then we start with the greater community. And we build that up so that we've got more bodies to take care of what needs to be done in the event that something should happen. The fourth aspect of the Rawlesian philosophy is there are moral absolutes. This one's pretty simple. You heard Tag and I talk about this on our What is Freedom videos. The 10 Commandments in my book are so effective because they are a series of moral absolutes. If you do not follow them, your life will be much harder than if you do follow them. Don't steal. Don't cheat. Don't lie. It's easy to look at moral relativism, but once that takes hold and a society starts going down that road, it ultimately leads to one of two things. It leads to despotism. As a word, try saying that on a Monday morning. And slavery, or it goes into anarchy and every man for himself. Moral absolutes give us the foundation for us to build every other aspect of who we are and who our culture and our society is. The next part of his philosophy is racism knows no reason. Now, this one's pretty simple. I think it's pretty pertinent today, too. Everybody should be judged on the quality of their character and what they do, not on the color of their skin. If you have somebody in your group that speaks solely in terms of skin color, they will be toxic to a group, and they will drag people down, and they will cause all sorts of problems, plain and simple. This next aspect of his philosophy speaks right towards modern self-sufficiency. Skills beat gadget, and practicality beats style. What that means is you can have all the gadgets and all the tools in the world, but if you don't have the skill to use them, they're useless. And you may have the most high-speed, coolest piece of gear out there, but if it's not practical, again, it's almost useless for you. This speaks towards learning how to do things on your homestead by yourself. You go out and you pick up the skills that you need, whether it's animal husbandry, carpentry, mechanic, anything. The list goes on. You could probably go down in the comments and list 10 things that are unique in your mind about the skills you need. And towards the second part of that, the practicality over style. I had a boss that used to say cool costs money. And in the preparedness community and in the homesteading community, there's a lot of cool stuff out there, and it costs money. And at the end of the day, it's not as useful as something that's practical. A cross-cut handsaw is way more practical in a grid down event than an electric saw. I love my electric saw. I use it all the time. But at the end of the day, if I don't have a handheld cross-cut saw, if something goes bad and I can't charge those batteries, then I'm up a creek, right? The next aspect, again, speaks to homesteading. Plentiful water and good soil is paramount. I said it before. I think the most underrated aspect of preparedness in regards to homesteading is water. One thing I learned over the last year, I knew it before, but it came into focus, is if you're running a homestead, it takes a lot of water. The standard prepper thing is 2 gallons of water per person per day. We're on a homestead. That takes care of us. What about the animals? In the height of the summer, we're going through 50, 60 gallons of water a day with our flocks, between the birds and the livestock. And it's only going to go up because we're going to add more animals. And then you add on to that the having to water the garden. Your water usage goes way up once you start homesteading. And soil. A lot of people, especially if you live in suburbia, I learned this the hard way. If you live in suburbia, chances are that you're living on dirt and not soil. Soil is alive. Dirt is just there. Soil is alive, and it's full of all kinds of living organisms and nutrients that the plants can use. We need to ensure that through regenerative processes that we're developing our soil and amending it and making it more productive for us. Now the next one, we talk about this all the time, and we have actually put this into practice. Tangibles beat conceptuals. Now what that means, fiat currency is a conceptual thing. It has no intrinsic value. It's based on people's ability to trust the government, basically. That's what the fiat currency, which the US dollar is fiat currency. Your investments are better placed in tangible goods, property, equipment, precious metals. In the prepper community, precious metals are a huge thing. But you're much better off having your wealth tied up into tangible things, because if the system goes away and the fiat currency collapses, you've still got something that is of value, as opposed to the people that have their money completely tied up in the stock market. Now, I'm not saying this is not financial advice. I'm not saying get out of the stock market. We still, even with our move to get our wealth into tangible assets, we still got money tied up in some stocks. But we have liquidated most of our stuff out of the market. This book was published in 2009. That was the last publishing. Well, that's the publishing date of this one. So it was written about that time frame, and some of these aspects that he talks about have proven so true. And this next one is one of those. Governments tend to expand to the point that they cause harm. Man. Have we seen that in spades recently? The whole purpose of the government is to grow itself. If you look at any disaster recovery plan that any government, I don't care what level of government it is, the very first point on that disaster recovery plan is continuity of government. So the government's first concern is its own survival, and it will expand. The bureaucracy will expand to the point where the regulations and the edicts coming from the government are harmful to the populace. And what happens is we end up with a nanny state. And as much as I hate to say it, the United States I don't think it's completely reached the nanny state point, but it's getting pretty darn close. So again, governments expand, that's what they do, and they will expand to the point that they start harming the populace. The next one, from a prepper standpoint, it holds true. From a homesteading point, it definitely holds true if you're living far away from any civilization. There is value in redundancy. Now, the common saying in the prepper community is 1 is none, 2 is 1. That holds true. Things break. If you're living way far away from the convenience of a big box store or a hardware store, if you run out of something, you're out of it. So instead of having just one of something, we have multiple somethings. I don't care what it is, whether it's 2 boxes of screws versus 1 box of screws, whether it's extra oil filters or air filters for the vehicles. Having that stuff on hand is important to maintaining things, especially in the face of some potentially disastrous event that causes the infrastructure to go away. Going to do a video here soon on the just-in-time inventory system, and this value and redundancy aspect talks directly to that. This next aspect is near and dear to my heart right now because I am in the middle of building out a deep pantry for us. And this aspect is a deep larder is essential. Again, this takes the redundancy aspect into the food realm, and we need to have food stocked up. You never know when people are going to be coming to your house. You never know when something's going to happen whenever you're out of power and you need some sort of quick food that you can't cook, or you don't need to cook, I should say. We need to have a deep larder, and our system is we have our deep pantry, we have our prep pantry, and then we have our ready pantry. And the way that works is our deep pantry is our long-term food storage stuff and stuff that we buy in bulk. The prep pantry is one that's more honed towards what we need on a regular basis, so that if anything goes out of the ready pantry, which is in the kitchen, if anything's out of there, all we have to do is walk to the ready pantry and pull what we need out, and then we'll move stuff from the deep pantry into the prep pantry. So we are big proponents of this, and there's a whole video series on developing your pantry system that we should probably do at some point, because it's not only in a prepper aspect, from a homesteading aspect, it's very important what with the produce that we have and the bounty that we have. This next aspect is kind of a more refined of the skills beat gadgets part of the philosophy. It is tools without training are useless. And in his philosophy, he speaks directly towards survival and self-defense tools, guns, and all the cool stuff that you buy for living off grid and all that stuff. That's what this speaks directly to, and the whole thing can be summed up into the sentence that just because you own a gun doesn't mean you're a shooter. Just as much as just because you've got all the fancy survival gear does not make you a survivalist. You have to learn how to use these things. And I've talked about it before on the channel. I am a big proponent of going out and paying for training whenever possible. These people, they have this knowledge and they have these skill sets, and it's way better to learn from somebody, having somebody teach you, than trying to teach yourself, because that second party can identify where you're making mistakes and where you need to change what you're doing. It's really easy. We can't see the forest for the trees when we're doing it by ourselves, and we tend to reinforce bad habits. So again, tools without skills are useless. Go get training on whatever you've got. I kind of mentioned this next aspect before, but it's old technologies are appropriate technologies. And what it does, it speaks to the fact that we cannot always rely on the modern technologies and the modern convenience of electricity and fossil fuels. We have to develop a toolkit that has older technologies in it. Example: a hand pumped well versus an electric well. If your well power goes off or your pump dies, how are you going to get water out of the ground? You're going to have to use that hand pump. The crosscut saw I was talking about. The modern conveniences of battery operated tools. I mean, they've come so far in the past 10 years. They're so much better than they used to be. They last longer. They're more powerful. But at the end of the day, if you can't charge them or they break, how are you going to construct stuff? So having a toolkit with all your hand tools that you need is very important. Farming, the whole modern farming agribusiness thing. It's heavily reliable on third party inputs and fossil fuels. We need to learn how to do it. Do a small garden by hand. All right. Use a hand cultivator. Whatever it takes. Have the ability to get these old technologies and use them. This next aspect is probably one of the most argued about aspects of his philosophy that's out there, and it is charity is a moral imperative. You hear people all the time, well, they didn't prepare, I'm not gonna help them, they're just gonna come back and they're just gonna want my stuff. And you have other people that say, no, we have to help them at the expense of our family's well-being. I mean, it runs all throughout the spectrum there. Here at Grumpy Acres, we believe charity is important. And as we've built our homestead and we built our preparations, we have built that into the system. We have the ability to give people in need a helping hand in one way or the other. And we do it on a regular basis. It's an Old Testament thing. Charity and tithing are very important. And if we lose our humanity and we just turn everybody away, then we're kind of missing the whole point of it all, right? I like this next aspect. It's one that we've lived by for quite a while. Buy assurance, not insurance. Now that on the face of that, it sounds like he's saying do not buy insurance. That's not what he's saying. What he's saying is that preparedness and homesteading are multifaceted affairs. Modern self-sufficiency is based on the ability to handle as many problems you face on the homestead with the skills, tools, and material you have on hand. So instead of buying one big thing that you think is going to ensure your well-being, we need to be investing in all these smaller aspects of preparedness. First aid. We need to have first aid. We need to have financial security with our tangible assets. We need, the whole food, water, shelter, and a means of self-defense. These are things that we need to invest on, whether we're living in an apartment in prepper mode or we're living on a great big homestead. This next one is exploit force multipliers. Now, force multipliers can mean several different things. And in the preparedness community, night vision, security alarms, things that allow us to have more of a presence in places where we aren't. Cameras, night vision goggles, alarms, things like that. On a larger scale, it's having that mechanical advantage that we talk about on a regular basis. We want to use that mechanical advantage to multiply things that we can do. Just as an example, working on the pantry, had to take that garage door out. Spent 5 minutes trying to take the door apart. Finally decided I wasn't going to save anything, so I went and got the skid loader. And what would have taken me hours to do by hand, I had done in about 15 minutes. I got it. I got everything out, and I got that old garage cleaned out that we're turning into the pantry. Took me 8 loads of skid loader to get all the junk and stuff out of there, but I got it done way quicker than I would have done by hand. And with that, we'll segue into the next aspect of his philosophy. Invest in your sweat equity. You may have all kinds of money at your disposal, and you may be able to hire contractors to do everything that you need to do. You may be able to hire hired hands to go out and work on your property and do what needs to be done. Don't do that. You need to do it yourself. You need that this goes back to learning skills and all that. You need to have the ability to do these things on your own, because you may not always have the money. You may not always have the ability to hire people. So you need to invest in your sweat equity, and James Wesley Rawles points out that one of the benefits of investing in sweat equity is it helps with your health. And I can attest to that right now. Go look up Farm Fit and look at some of these big hosses that all they do is manual labor all day long, and you'll see how fit they are. This next aspect is one that we talk about constantly in our efforts to build community, and it's choose your friends wisely. One of the hardest parts of building community is getting that initial conversation going and developing a friendship to the point where you invite somebody into your circle. A toxic friend can be disastrous. They will drag you down. They will tear groups apart. It's really important that we vet our friends and we expect our friends to do more for us. I heard somebody say one time, and I've come to believe this: if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. If you're the most moral person in the room, you're in the wrong room. You need to surround yourself by people that will uplift you, they will make you a better person, and they will expect more out of you. So choose your friends wisely. This next aspect, we talked about it a little bit in our security and our shelter videos. And he narrows it down, and he talks about a very narrow aspect of this, and that is there is no substitute for mass. If you're building a property out, you're building a house, building a building, you need to have mass in those walls for security purposes. It takes more to get through a bigger door than a flimsy door. If you get hit by a tornado, a concrete building is better than a stick-built building. If you're in a situation where somebody may be shooting at your property, being able to hide behind something that will stop bullets is infinitely better than being behind 2x4s and drywall. And he points out exactly that sandbags are cheap and you should buy them and you should have them on hand. This next aspect is a good one too, and it's always have a plan B and a plan C. Now, admittedly, we kind of narrowed our plan B's and C's down when we moved here by the fact that I'm getting old and I don't want to move again, and the idea of walking away from my property does not appeal to me. And I've told people on multiple occasions, this is where I'm going to plant my spear. This is the last property. I'm planting my spear here. I'm not going anyplace else. But that's not really a great idea. We should have plan B and plan C for our lifestyles and what we're going to do in the event that something should happen. And it goes all the way from having our primary dwelling, our plan A, our homestead, to our plan B, where we may store stuff at somebody else's property, that's in our mutual assistance group, all the way down to having a bag packed so that if something happens and you have to leave on a moment's notice, you can grab it and go. So always have a plan B, always have a plan C. Now this next one's kind of hard to live by, especially in today's day and age. Live frugally. Be frugal. My grandparents grew up in the Depression. My parents are both children of the Depression era too. We lived a much frugaler lifestyle than what we live now. I mean, I remember. Go ahead and post down in the comments if your parents ever put Wonder Bags on over your socks before you put your snow boots on to keep your feet dry when you went outside. The whole idea of use it up, wear it out, mend it, or be without needs to hold true in our daily lives. We have become a society of consumables and throwaway stuff, so we need to get back to living a more frugal life. Now, this next aspect, I'm a firm believer in this. Some things are worth fighting for. It's kind of why we're in the situation we're in now. I chose to take a stand, and for better or worse, here we are. We need to have moral lines that are worth fighting for. They should not be crossed, and it goes all the way from our personal interactions with people to the larger concept of our liberties and freedoms. Some things are worth fighting for, and if you're not willing to fight for it, then you're going to live a life of subjugation and slavery. This next aspect is where homesteading becomes the ultimate expression of prepping. The best defense is to live at your bug out location full time, year round. Now, you're homesteading and you're like, bug out location? What? I'm not a prepper. Yeah, you are. You kind of are. You're living on your homestead, and you're living that modern self-sufficiency life, and you're building the infrastructure for a long-term stay there, and being able to function should the infrastructure go away. Now, I'm not saying this is not saying anything about somebody that's living in an apartment or on a suburban lot, and they have the idea, they have a piece of property that's away from where they are now, and their idea is to go where they can be safe. I'm not saying that's not a good plan. What I'm saying is, and what this aspect is saying is, by living at your location year round, you get rid of a lot of problems that may arise. You're going to have to go from point A to point B, and you can have mechanical problems, you can have civil unrest, you can have all kinds of things. So living at your property year round and developing it, building your gardens, building your livestock is much more preferable than having a remote bug out location that you're going to go to. And that's why I always say if you can move up that spectrum from basic prepper to homesteader, we should always be moving that direction. And now we're to the final aspect of the Rawlesian survival philosophy, and it is nothing happens by chance. Man, this one really strikes home to me. It's always been in the back of my mind, but it's been driven home with a vengeance over the last year and a half for me. Nothing happens by chance. If we're going to be prepared and we're going to have the moral clarity to take a stand when we need to and fight for our freedoms and our liberties, if we're going to homestead, if we're going to become prepared, if we're not homesteading, we're in a suburban lot or we're in an apartment, we're going to be prepared. Nothing happens by chance. We have to make a decision. You make that decision and then you move on it. And you move on it in a systematic and methodical method or manner and move towards your goal. You're not going to reach your goal by accident. You're not going to reach your goal by some serendipity. It takes motivation and intentional action to get where we want to be. All right? Well, that's the Rawlesian survival philosophy as found in How to Survive the End of the World as We Know It in a nutshell. Now, if you've got something you'd like to add to that, go ahead and make a comment down below. I think it's really important. I wanted to share this with you because it goes a long way towards fleshing out full spectrum preparedness and full spectrum homesteading. If you like this kind of content, give me a big thumbs up. I enjoy bringing this to you. Hit that notification bell. I'm gonna do some more survival preparedness videos, the full spectrum preparedness videos. We're doing more homesteading videos. I've got the pantry rehab. We've got projects going on outside. Gonna have more videos of the animals. Some of those lambs, I got to make some more shorts for you guys. Those lambs are hilarious. Lambo, the one that was born when it was really cold. Yes, I named him Lambo just because there's so many of them. I got to give them names so I know which one's which. He was chasing the chickens around yesterday. It was funny as could be. Anyway, we're gonna make more videos, so hit that thumbs up button or the notification bell. If you're not a subscriber, consider subscribing. We could really use your support. And speaking of support on the channel, don't forget our bonfire shop. You can buy Grumpy Acres t-shirts, sweatshirts, hoodies. We've got male, female, and small children t-shirts of different designs, and I'm trying to do a seasonal or a quarterly. I'm trying to do a special non-Grumpy Acres shirt for you guys, and the one that's coming up probably the soonest is I've got an Irish permaculture shirt that's on there. So if you're Irish and you enjoy celebrating St. Paddy's Day, this may be a shirt that you'll like. Well, in a nutshell, Grumpy Acres, I'm glad you guys stopped by. We really enjoy doing this for you. Go live a lifetime free. Thanks, Milo.